This time on Poll Hub, hang on. I'm getting a call. What's that? Wow, you'll give me $200,000 and all I need to do is send you 100? Oh, this is a great deal. Well, if that seems somewhat familiar, that's because there are scammers everywhere. They've overrun your phone, texts, email. You are not alone. It's an epidemic. We have the numbers to prove it, and we're going to talk about it. Then the baby bust, another one, is upon us. Why are fewer Americans having kids? We're going to look into that. Finally, what were you in a prior life? What would you like to be in a future life? Reincarnation is our fun fact, which is really cool, since in my last life, I wanted to come back as a podcast host. Cha-ching. And hi, everybody. Welcome to Poll Hub. I'm JD Dapper.
I'm Mary Griffiths.
And I'm Lee Miringoff.
So that wasn't a real phone call in the open there, but boy, do I get those. Like 2 or 3 a day. And my favorite one, she identifies herself as Brianna Troy, who is a character on an old Star Trek show, not the original Star Trek. And Brianna Troy is calling to offer my business a $200,000 loan. They are nonstop, and the scammers are everywhere. I think we all have experienced it, whether it's in text or email or phones. A little bit of data, and then we're going to talk about this. Gallup, November 2023, 15% of Americans, which is about 21 million people, say at least one member of their household was tricked by a scammer into sending money or providing access to a financial account in the past year. That's getting tricked by the scams, right? Scams now rank among the 4 most prevalent crimes affecting American households. That's on par with property vandalism, theft, and identity theft. Despite this, fewer than 30% of scam victims end up reporting incident to police. Curious, why? Few reasons. They're unsure. Who do you call? You call the cops. They feel embarrassed by it, or they felt the amount was too small to worry about, or they assume nothing could be done, which is probably the safest assumption there. Last year, Pew did a survey. It was in April of 2025. 73% of U.S. adults say they have experienced at least one type of online scam or attack. I have to say I'm stunned that it's only 73%. I don't know where people live or in what world, or I don't know how you aren't affected by this, but apparently only 73% said that. More than 9 in 10 Americans say online scams and attacks are a problem in the country. 79% describe them as a major problem. Mary, have you ever gotten a text or an email or a scam kind of call? Or are you part of the 21% back in 2025 who had not?
Yeah, of course I have. In fact, almost daily I get an email from somebody saying that here's your invoice for something that I know I have not bought. And of course, I hover over the link to see that it is some weird name that is not associated with the person. And I daily delete those. I've gotten tons of those phone calls. And sadly, I have been a victim. I've never given out money to anyone who's called or solicited, but I have been a victim of fraudulent charges on my credit card. In fact, just a couple of months ago, someone tried to charge $10,000 from a Home Depot, actually up in the area where we work. But thankfully, I had fraud alerts on my credit card and was able to stop that. And sadly, I think I've shared with most of you, and this isn't a scam, but my 4-year-old had her Social Security number stolen, and a fraudulent tax return was filed with her Social Security number. So we're sorting through that as we speak. That's a long answer to your short question, Jay.
It is a scam. I mean, what happened to your daughter, that's definitely a scam. Different type and kind of more a worse scam in some ways. Lee, let me read off the top 6 types of scams, and then let's talk about what you've experienced. So among the 6 types of online scams and attacks that are measured, this is according to Pew in April of last year, 48% of American adults say online hackers made fraudulent charges on their credit or debit card. So what Mary experienced, I think we've all experienced. I've experienced that too. It's funny, I didn't even think of that as a scam when we were looking at this segment. And it's like, oh, that's just life. 36% say they purchased an item online that never arrived or was counterfeit and then was never refunded. I can't imagine that with all the Amazon fine products that are no shade to Amazon, but come on, there are some things on there that you wonder about. 29% say a personal online account was hacked. That includes social media, email, and bank account. 24% say they received a scam email, text, or call that led them to give away personal information. I think 100% have received those. 10% say they got ransomware that blocked use of their computer. That's the one that scares me a lot. And 7% say they gave money to a fake online investment opportunity. Lee, if you were likely to do that, I just suggest that you talk to me first, and I can give you the bank account to transfer the funds
The
to.
direct transfer, yeah. Jaded Dapper for Peace and Freedom. It's a new group, very, very active in Columbia County, I understand. Yeah, so I was kind of checking as you were going along. I don't check every box. I do know that there is lots in the bank fraud, credit card, not getting things delivered that you ordered, and getting things delivered that you didn't order. It plays both ways. So, I mean, I think this is just, as you're suggesting, this is just, a wildfire at this point. And obviously, the folks who are doing it, as wise as a consumer can be, there's got to be some money in this, or they'd be evaporating, and they aren't. It's become quite a cottage industry for our modern way of doing things. So it's sort of like with everything that exists, like online shopping, there's also the, and if you get a new computer, you got to worry about cybersecurity. So, I mean, we have this negative side to everything. And we did have an instance where a bank charge occurred, which was not real. And we got called from the bank. And this is a while ago. So it's not my current bank, but someone had actually used my wife's name, and there are photographs up in Vermont of this person going to the bank, and get this, having a cast on her right arm and explaining why her signature wasn't clearly written because the arm was broke. I mean, hello, you got to get extra points for that kind of inventiveness. Yeah, and what was sad about it from that little tale is that the bank, having identified this person, did not do anything because it was more expensive for them to litigate than to just say, let bygones be bygones and so on, and you're done. And I found that to be kind of like a big downer on kind of like where we are in things.
No, I was going to jump in. You said that this has become a cottage industry. I think it's more than that. According to the Federal Trade Commission's Consumer Central Network data book in 2024, and these are just figures that are reported losses, Americans reported losing $12.5 billion to fraud in 2024. And that's a 25% increase from $10 billion in 2023. So in a year, that has increased by 1 in 4. The FTC also received 2.6 million fraud reports, nearly the same numbers in 2023. But reported losses grew sharply, meaning incidents resulted in higher losses on average. Now, what I think is interesting here, Jay, as you pointed out, is that a lot of people don't report these types of incidences. And do you think that has a lot to do with the fact that nothing is going to get done, or that they don't necessarily know where to go or what to do, or even that they should report this type of fraud or scam?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably all of the above. When it's a credit card charge, you call your credit card company and you reverse it. That's kind of, easy. But I think that when it's something like, especially if it's an investment scam and you send the money, there's the embarrassment factor, but it's also, so I call the police. How are they going to get it back? Who knows I don't know who this person was. I don't know where they were. They could be anywhere in the world. I don't know if any of these pictures are real or AI or fake or whatever. So I think there's part of it is that. I do recall, over the last years that attorney generals or police commissioners or chiefs have done news conferences all over the country at various times, talking about reporting this and doing that. I don't think it's really broken through, though, considering just how much of it there is. If this kind of crime was happening at this level, and it was like the shoplifting that happened to COVID, it was actually a very small amount. Despite the videos that made it look like it was happening in every CVS in every corner of the world, it was actually a very small amount. Yet there were task force set up. There was a huge amount of effort put into that. Considering how small that was compared to how large the amount of scamming is, I think it's interesting that there does not seem to be as much enforcement on that. And I can't help but think some of that is because it's really, really hard to actually find people. And then it's even harder to recover the money. How do you recover the money? Even if you can find the person, they're in Belarus, What's the Port Chester Police Department going to do in that case?
Yeah, let's understand that. I mean, the stuff that's being peddled is done very slickly. I mean, there's a lot of convincing that goes on along the way. And the telltale sign for me is always, this is an urgent thing. You have 3 days to do this, or the sky will fall. And so whenever there's a deadline or a time, that sort of gets our gear into place. And so, they get this, and they know. And I think to some extent, unfortunately, the elderly are more prey to this. And the people, the numbers suggest that people aren't as well off financially are also a victim to a greater degree on these things. So it has a societal impact, and it's not, one size fits all.
It's interesting what you say about the elderly, though, because the Pew Research study, 84% of Americans say adults 65 and older are extremely likely to fall victim, while only 22% say that adults under 30 are likely to fall victim. But that's actually not the case. Older adults are not actually that much more likely to fall victim. There's not this huge disparity, despite this picture we have of grandpa sending off the last $20,000 to somebody, on the other end of the computer. What is interesting to me is the future of this, though. If this size of business now and is this ubiquitous now and fools at least enough people, and Mary, as you said, it's like they send out 100,000 of these. They only got to get one. It doesn't cost anything to send it out. What about with AI? What is that going to do? And I think that's where we leave this segment is, boy, it's a big problem. It needs to get more attention. People need to be cared. There's a lot of misunderstandings and conceptions we have about it. But all of those things, I just can't help but think are going to get a lot worse with AI.
Now we're going to shift gears and talk about a historic low, and that is in reference to America's fertility rate. More adults under the age of 50 say they don't plan to ever have children. And at the same time, polls show that Americans still consider 2 or 3 children to make up the ideal family size, meaning that the country is having fewer babies than people themselves say they want. And of course, there is concern about the so-called replacement rate. So what does this all mean? Let's take a look at some numbers first and foremost. According to PBS NewsHour's reporting on new CDC data in July of 2025, the U.S. fertility rate did drop to an all-time low in 2024, about 1.6 children per woman. That's well below the 2.1 replacement rate, the level at which a country needs to maintain a stable population without immigration. And in fact, in 2007 was the last time that the U.S. hit 2.1. Birth rates are on the decline for women in their 20s and early 30s in 2024, with no change for women in their late 30s. Now, according to Pew, American adults under 50 years of age without children, 47% say they are unlikely to ever have children, up 10 points from 37% in 2018. And the leading reason, 57% say they just don't want children. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the rub here is that according to Gallup, Americans say that the ideal family size averages 2.7 children, unchanged from 2018, 2023, and 2025 reading by Gallup. So I want to stop there. And Jay, what do you think really accounts for this discrepancy between the number of children that people are having versus what they consider to be, and I'm using air quotes here, the ideal, because I think that really can be debated as to what ideal means.
So I think this is America catching up with the rest of the industrialized world. And we have lagged behind the declining birth rates for decades in this country as compared to Western Europe and now industrialized Asia and even China. And the large reason for that, in fact, the entire reason for that is immigration. And when you shut down immigration, as we've done, the birth rate is going to start heading down as a statistic because it has been low among native-born Americans for quite some time. There's a lot of sociology, there's a lot of economics, there's a lot of research behind this, and it almost all relates to economic well-being. The better off the family is, the better off the women are, the more opportunities they have, the less they feel the need to have children. It's an option, but it's not a need. In societies where there's a lot of poverty and where incomes are very low, there's an economic rationale for having children to support the family, even though you might think, oh, wait, there's more mouths to feed. Why would you do that? It's the opposite, and it's true, and it's always been true in every society throughout history. None of that is new. I do think that the big change here is from 2007 to now, and as the birth rate declines, and we'll get new numbers next month from last year, and I would be very surprised if the numbers are coming back. So much of it has to do with we're just catching up with the rest of the world because the industrial world didn't have the immigration levels that we did. We now have low immigration levels like they do, and so we're going to hit their same birth rates.
Talk about economic uncertainty. Tell me when there's economic uncertainty, and we'll see people reacting in very rational ways. So what has happened to America in my lifetime, certainly, well, it's a longer span of time than anybody else here, but the idea of a one income family household is really not realistic anymore. So, we've changed. Okay. And the women are expected in growing numbers, not everybody. There's still people who think that should have this traditional role as, stay home and take care of the kids in the household. But more and more clearly, and we all know this, is that it's become a necessity, sometimes a desire for a career, and more times than not, a necessity that more money being brought into the household than is. And then you get into other things. So what does that mean? Well, children, grow up, they go to college, more go back home afterwards, but it takes them longer to get to their houses. It takes them longer. Everything is slowing down. So, it's longer to get to that economic comfort level and lifestyle than their parents did. And so the delay is very rational and very understandable. And I think the last time, you mentioned 2007. Well, that's sort of about when things blew up economically. And before that, there was some increases in the late 90s in the 90s and, the Carter Bush 41 time. I'm testing Carter, I meant Clinton, and Bush 41 time where, the economy was fairly decent and the birth rates were reflecting that as well. So you can connect it to economics, as you say, in a big way and help understand an awful lot of what's going on with this.
Well, one point that I wanted to make in relation to the ideal family size, I think a lot of people may want to have more children or may not want to have more children. Be like, okay, well, you know what? That's not for me. But if you choose to have more kids, good for you. Wouldn't it be nice to have 2 or 3 children in relation to that, perceived image of the ideal family? But there is concern about this decline. According to Pew Research Center's views on the declining U.S. birth rate in September of 2025, 53% of Americans say fewer people choosing to have kids would have a negative impact on the country. And that's up 6 points in just 1 year. And this is interesting. 59% of men compared with 48% of women say that it would have a negative impact. Now, if I can editorialize for just 1 second, men biologically are not the ones having children here. And so I think that a lot of that perception has to do, Lee, as you like to say, from where one sits. Because, there are, as you pointed out, traditional gender roles and gender norms that people are supposed to pick up. And we've had this discussion before, regardless of how many strides women have made in the workforce, there are still perceptions out there that they are supposed to do certain things. So that certainly doesn't surprise me at all, nor does the statistic that says that 56% of Americans say that the federal government should have absolutely no role in encouraging more people to have children, and women 63% are more likely than men, 48% to say that government should stay out of it. Do you think that we will get to a point where government will have some sort of voice in terms of the birth rate here in the United States?
You could do a lot about it. Without being, big brother coming into the bedroom. You can do a lot about it. You can have support for childcare. You can have tax exemptions for kids going up. There's, the childcare alone issue is if you have 2 people working in a household, there's a lot going towards childcare. That's
Amen, Lee.
Yeah, you say it. So this is a very, as I say, it's rational, it's realistic. It's less to me about some kind of cultural change where people have different attitudes and blah, blah, blah. I think it really has to do with the dollars and what's coming in and what's going out and who's doing what in terms of their daily activities. And clearly there's an awful lot being spent on the economy. And then we say government could be doing more. Clearly, we're not at that point right now.
It's funny, though, Lee, because there is a partisan difference that Pew picked up where 63% of Republicans see it as a negative that we have a declining birth rate, and 44% of Democrats think that. And there has been this kind of cultural shift, the trad mom trend that, women belong in the house, barefoot, pregnant, raising kids, being loyal to their man, their husband, and all of that kind of stuff. And that was kind of an SNL skit for a while, but it's real. It's a real trend. It's out there, and there are a lot of people, and they're on the right. It's politically on the right. And there are a lot of podcasters and brocasters. We'll call them that. And this is what they pitch. And it's interesting to me that you brought up, the government, because in the poll it says keep the government out of it. And yet the most effective way to raise population and raise birth rates is by doing that. And a couple of countries in Europe have actually succeeded in not turning it around entirely, but by having significant support for families and newborns, newborns, paternity leave that lasts more than a few weeks, maternity leave that lasts more than 2 months. Those are the kinds of things that can encourage people to have children and can actually stem the tide. And yet the same people who want the trad moms at home, barefoot and pregnant, are the ones who seem to be very much opposed to the idea that there would be any support for those trad moms sitting at home. So I think there's a lot of hypocritical stuff going on here. But I also think it's interesting that this issue has now crossed into the culture, which it really hadn't, even though birth rates have been declining. And there's always been this traditional family structure, argument especially among social conservatives and Christian conservatives. Great. But it's now crossed over into a kind of a meme cultural thing that I find very interesting because it is so hypocritical for those same people then to be opposed to all the things that actually would do the thing that they want. For me, I question their motives. That's just me.
A topic of interest to everyone, and the question being that was posed in 1997 by Fox News poll and made available to us by our friends at the Roper Center at Cornell. And the question was, of a national audience, very simple question. Do you believe in reincarnation? And 24% said yes, 66% said they don't believe in it, and 10% weren't sure, which is probably the most honest answer, but understandable. But it's something everybody has, I think, a view on. And, you can feel that you came from something or that you're going to something, which could be, I guess, different things. I could have come from a dog and end up a cat. I don't know, but that's not the point. Anyway, what do you make of this topic? First of all, are you surprised by the numbers? I thought the believing in reincarnation would be more than 24%. I mean, more people believe in that the moon landing didn't happen. So
yeah, right.
So reincarnation's a much easier.
No, I agree with you. I was a little surprised considering how, off in crazy land we are in a lot of ways. Reincarnation seems pretty why not? Could be. So I was a little surprised by that. I don't know if I believe in reincarnation, but I would really like to come back as, or hopefully I was in the past, something that could fly. I've always wanted to fly, and I think so. I'd love to come back as like a soaring kind of bald eagle or something. I just think that would be great.
An airplane,
so,
but
not as an airplane. No, I don't think they're
I didn't think that.
No.
Not with the price of fuel anyway. Mary, are you a believer? Tell me you're a believer.
I am not a believer, but I would like to be able to dictate what some people come back as.
Oh, we're not going to name names, I hope, but we do have some student producers. Cassidy, where do you line up on this? Are you a believer? I feel like I'm, peddling Sunday services. Do you believe?
I would like to believe. I find it a little hard to believe, but I think it kind of is soothing in a way to think that life doesn't end and you come back. But I think the freakier thought is that you don't necessarily come back with your memories. But on the other hand, I think it's a really interesting thought when people say deja vu is from your past life. And it's weird when you're like, I feel like I've been here before. I feel like I've met you before. And it's like, maybe I have. I don't know. So that's quite interesting about it.
Interesting. AJ, what do you think?
I'm not sure, but if it does exist, I think that in a past life, I might have been some sort of ocean animal because I used to have dreams that I was like in the deep sea. So I think maybe I could have been a whale of sorts.
How about a shark?
I don't know about a shark. Thinking something more passive.
Yeah, you don't have the
there.
shark attitude. That didn't pass through. But the whale thing, you're smart and you're thoughtful and you make strange sounds and clicks. No, that's not.
Everything adds up.
I'm really dating myself on this, but I think the most famous person I can think of in this category who believes in this was Shirley MacLaine, the actress. That this was just part of her belief system. The physicist Neil deGrasse Tyson talks about this, and he says, the odds of being who you are like one in some astronomical, no pun intended, trillion figure. I mean, the fact that you became who you are is so, take that, winning that lotto as a kind of like a gift, and you don't necessarily buy into the scientific realities because they're not there for after.
And Lee, don't put Shirley MacLaine in the ground just yet. I do believe she is still alive and her next life has yet to be determined.
Oh, yes, there you go.
We share a birthday, so I could come back as Shirley MacLaine if she could come back as me, It's possible. We share a birthday with Prince too. So who knows what could come out of this reincarnated birthday group that I'm part of? It could be very exciting.
If there's any news developments on this topic between now and next week, we'll sure breaking news. Anyway, that's it for this week, folks, and we'll catch up with you next week.
That'll do it for Poll Hub this week.
Poll Hub is produced by the Marist Poll at Marist University in Poughkeepsie, New York.
Mary Griffith is our executive producer.
Casey Schaff is our production supervisor.
The Poll Hub team includes AJ Gambino, Tommy Rogers,
Cassie Connors, and Molly Goodger.
If you enjoy Poll Hub, consider telling a friend about us.
If you'd like to learn more about polling and survey science, check out the Marist Poll Academy, our free online learning portal accessible from our website.
Remember, you can always tell your smart speaker to play Poll Hub, and with any luck, it'll cooperate.
Finally, wherever you listen to Poll Hub, there is a subscribe button. Click it, and the latest episode will be ready for you in your podcasting app as soon as it's released.
We'll see you next time.